other areas? Was there discussion about adding another world language at the high school? Was there a discussion about doing something with world language at the elementary school? You know, which all of those would enhance the educational program that our students are currently having. So, was there discussion about those things, Tom?
There has been, and we actually, through Colleen Cordanudo's committee, the curriculum committee, we actually just started discussing that and talking about those very things. That we had year-round school listed also. So all those pieces are part of that. And my reply to those different comments is that we can make that possible, or some of those things possible, through this process, but only if the levy passes. If the levy doesn't pass, then to me those are going to be really uphill battles, and I can't necessarily guarantee that we can get those things through in the next 2 or 3 years. With the levy passing, that's going to help us utilize those, because we're going to have we'll be avoiding a lot of these cuts that are going to be pretty impactful.
Yeah,
but
I
the answer is
understand
yes,
that is all is contingent upon the levy passing, Todd. That's not the issue at all.
Right.
My question is, was there discussion about things other than what's on this list?
Mm-hmm.
And if there was, why were they not placed on the list, like another world language, like enhancing the STEM program, year-round school, those kinds of areas that you know, significantly enhance the educational opportunities for students?
Yeah, they were discussed, and we didn't put it on the list for the actually we took the discussion items off the bottom of the list. We made that decision at the last minute to talk about what was discussed in here, but it was discussed. I think the difficulty of it is that whole promise issue that I've been trying to kick around for the last 3 months, of people talking about the kindergarten and whether or not we can follow through on that whole piece. A lot of those innovative programs that you're talking about, and this is not an excuse for not having it on there, I'm just trying to be realistic. We want to move forward with those programs, and we want to look into those and do a good study on the positive impact that it has on kids. But I guess maybe more so I felt that I don't know if I could actually put this in the document, and then if the levy does pass and we put down that we're going to be implementing year-round school, I don't know if I could comfortably have that message out there. But I just want to assure you that we have been discussing them. There are items that were on the curriculum committee tonight, but they're not on this list just simply because of that promise issue that I'm having right now with the all-day, everyday kindergarten. Right or wrong, that's why they're not on the list.
To be clear, though, I think it's important that, you know, this list is about the size of what the levy can enable us to do. So there isn't a lot of room for a lot of things outside of this, if perhaps any. So I think this is a which doesn't mean we're not going to be trying to be innovative.
Right.
We'll always be looking at balancing one program versus others. I think that's something we'll always do.
Yep.
But this is the impact of the levy here, and not necessarily all the things that we can potentially be
I think
looking at.
Tom made a comment at the curriculum committee. The secret pot of money is located at the state and at the federal level, and if we knew what that secret pot of money was, we could go ahead and implement all those programs. But we just don't. They're holding us hostage right now.
And all of our discussions will have to be in light of what the state does or doesn't do and what the federal government does or doesn't do.
Any more questions, comments about this list of potential improvements? All right, so hearing none, we'll move on to the potential cuts that will take place. I think the first thing to make sure that we're very clear on is that it would be if the board decided on this, but I think this has been the intent of the board, that these items that we'll be talking about next, none of these would be on a cut list should the levy pass, but will be on a cut list should the levy not pass. So, what we have in front of us is a list of items that now total 1.7 million.
Mr. Chair,
Questions or comments on this
just,
list?
I made this point before, but in the box above the item B, a couple of things. Yeah, I think they were more than discussed by an informal committee. They were identified by, and I don't know if it's an informal or ad hoc committee, but I wouldn't use the word informal committee. And the committee was not suggested by the board, it was suggested by the superintendent, and I think tacitly nods of head, but just, I think,
Yeah.
to be totally factual there.
Can we just rephrase
Yeah, I
that?
think that's exactly right. I think, James, you convey a better sense of that committee being identified by the superintendent at the request. I think it's fair to say that that was at the request of the school board.
No, it wasn't at the request, because it was a work session, we can't take action like that at a work session,
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yep,
yeah.
yeah.
So if can I just reread it? If the levy does not pass, the following cuts totaling $1.7 million have been discussed by a committee that was suggested by the superintendent.
Right.
Is that right? We don't
Well,
have
I
to
don't know if they were
identify.
discussed, I think they were identified, I mean, they were really.
They were
the group that-
identified, yep.
That came up with it, it's,
Yeah.
And it was suggested, and did you put the part about being suggested? Because is that taken off?
Suggested by the superintendent.
We're gonna put by the superintendent, I think would be better.
Suggested by the superintendent.
or we don't even need to, I mean, we could just drop that whole thing, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We could just say was discussed by a ad hoc committee,
Mhm.
maybe administration staff or whatever, sort of the groupings that were represented. But I don't think it really, who suggested it, I don't think is important, but I don't want to say it was us, because I don't think it was us, but,
It was suggested to the school board.
yeah.
And hopefully next Monday night, we're gonna own it one way or another.
I'd just leave it off personally and say who was sort of on the committee.
Do I
Not
even
by
need it?
name, but by, you know,
Do I even need the box? Can I just cross the whole thing out?
yeah,
Is it implied that you're getting this from a committee or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing to keep in mind is that this is brought to us by the superintendent, and we understand where he came from. We're not taking action on this tonight, and when we do take action on it, next week, we will own that. As I think Howard just said, these will be things that we have identified, and they were recommended to us, but we own them once we vote on them.
I would just, yes, I think there should be some disclaimer in there that this is not just the superintendent and the principals sitting in a closed room coming up with these ideas, that there was extensive input from other stakeholders, so
Yep.
I think it'd be important to have it on there, Todd.
Okay.
Yeah. A description of the committee is probably more important than,
If I could add to what Jerry just said, you know, what Todd mentioned earlier, that we've seen these cuts before, primarily, and they were part of a discussion that's been going on for months. So this is, again, not something that was just
That's right.
pulled out of thin air and, you know, since the levy was approved or anything like that. These were real situations that have been discussed by a number of people in a number of forums over a considerable period of time.
all right. Now on to the items themselves, as discussed here. There are additions to this list from the last time, and I think Todd and I, at the next meeting, are going to ask you to work on a list that is the amount of 1.7 million. This list currently does add up to that.
What were the new items? Can you point them out to us?
Yeah, and I think it's, just so we're clear, we're as close to 1.7 million as we think that we can get. And there's gonna be some variance in there too. So I don't, if we hit this on the nose, that'll be great, but there's a lot of things that'll happen as a result of these things being on. So I hate to say 1.7 million, but I would say use the word approximately 1.7 million on these pieces, because there's a lot of variables in here that are involved. But we did the best we can to try to get as close as we could to that number. Okay. And you're gonna see that it's pretty impactful, and it's, pretty clear. Really, you've seen all of these different areas, they have some impact statements on there, you can go ahead and take a look at those later. Or I can go through them as well.
Just a question on number 2 under district-wide. So we would not identify any hazardous roads?
No, that would not, if we identify the hazardous roads, if we don't, just putting dollar amounts, maybe you should explain this with the dollar amounts.
That's fine.
Have Cleen do it, so,
Right.
come on up, Cleen. One's 150, one's 50, and I'll have Cleen explain it. Getting tongue-tied.
Oh, when we sat down with Faribault Transportation and talked about hazards,
Mhm.
you know, where do you stop on 60 and say it's not a hazard anymore, and where do you stop on 21 and say it's not a hazard anymore? So, and if you identify those two roads as hazards, you aren't gonna save a dime, because there's, you know, those kids, that's where the population is that attend Lincoln and Jefferson and Roosevelt, so. It was really just very, very difficult to make that decision to take hazards out.
Okay. Yeah, and just one other question, have we had discussion with the Faribault Police Department about the potential of not having 21 and 60 identified as hazardous?
No, we have
crossings?
not.
Okay. Might want to alert them to that possibility.
You bet.
And I think that, just in talking with Faribault Transportation too, if this is something you feel you absolutely cannot live with, they could go, not saying that, I mean, they need time to do this, but they're saying that if we adjust school start times between the schools, different elementary schools would start at different times, they might be able to do something different. If we don't go maybe to a full 2 miles, maybe we go 1.75 miles or 1.5 miles, but, you know, that's,
I will tell you, you get into the discussion about what is 2 miles from where,
yes.
Right.
so it's not easy to resolve.
So I don't know as if those are things worth pursuing, but this is something that,
Do we have any idea, how many students do we transport currently?
about
Any idea?
3,300.
3,300, so we transport probably about 80% of our students.
We would be not transporting a little over 800.
Okay.
And those are the numbers we looked at last spring when we did this. And about 640, I think, were elementary students in the K-5 program. So a significant impact on the 3 elementary schools.
And the savings is about,
154,000, something.
Okay, thank you, Colleen.
thanks Cleen for helping me out.
Other comments on this list?
I can do do you want me to go through the?
I'd like to hear what the new ones
The
were.
new ones are, I
just so
think it's
Yep.
important, yep.
The main, well, actually, the only new pieces on there, if you look at the district-wide, we looked at the staff development funds for curricular enhancements. There's not a lot of staff development funds in there, but we use that money to pay teachers to modify, improve, or create curriculum for the school. So that's not a lot of dollars, but that was added. Then the elementary school, the biggest one of all the cuts, I believe, is looking at the elementary staffing down at the bottom. We originally had 4th and 5th grade for the impact of about 1.2 million, and we added the 2nd and 3rd grade levels to get to that 1.7, between 1.6 and 1.7. So those are the biggest impacts. And they have the different class size ratios as a result of that cut.
So you're talking about the bottom of page 5, number 4.
Yep, yes.
And so what did you do here? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah,
What are we
sure.
doing?
We originally had, on the first working document, you had 4th grade and 5th grade, where we have 12 teachers, and we reduced those to 9. 1 teacher out of each grade, or each school out of each grade level. So then we added 6 more teachers by making the same reductions in grades 2 and 3. So the first work session you saw just had grades 4 and 5.
And so that's where you get up to this 1 to 32 now,
Yep,
and that's from 1 to 24.
yes, that's correct. So grades 2 through 5 would have a ratio of 1 to 31 or better. And that's an average, so some schools have more and other schools will have a little less.
And that's not talking about the dynamics of those classes either, it's just numbers.
These are just numbers.
How do you teach school with 32 kids in second grade? Do you have any aides or anything?
No, we cut the aides last year. We have aides in just kindergarten now, right, Nicole? Or do we have some in do they leak in first grade a little bit, or is it just kindergarten?
A little bit first grade.
Yep. But no, the teachers are on their own.
So you have one teacher in a room,
Yep,
one adult in the room, or is there,
unless you get volunteers. Or if you have an EL teacher, or you have a special education teacher that's working with some kids. But yeah, the one teacher is in charge of the entire classroom.
It's still kind of when Ms. Norgard indicated you're not even babysitting anymore.
I think when we get specific like this, I mean, we talked about increasing class sizes conceptually, but this really brings it home when you see the actual numbers, so that's good work.
And I noticed kindergarten and first grade are not listed here, so you're not suggesting any negative impact there.
Yep.
One of the members of the curriculum committee made an interesting comparison in talking about class size this afternoon, saying that perhaps not everyone appreciates the impact of that, but if you were to think about your family and adding one or two more children at your table every night
Mhm.
and being responsible for their care and medical care and all the things that go with it, even one more child in that situation adds quite a load. Imagine adding 8 or 9 in a classroom situation.
what was talked about that was rejected by the committee?
We talked about textbooks, and we tried to reallocate those. Most of the books that we're getting right now, and that budget's been cut back too, are like workbooks for the math for the kids to write in the workbooks. So we need to maintain that budget to allow those kids to utilize those books. So I can't tell you where else to go because we're awfully thin as it is right now. So we tried to examine just about everything.
And what did you talk about, what was the discussion?
I'm sorry, we did talk about case facilitators and administration that came back too. We had the discussion of whether or not we should try to eliminate case facilitators, which we could put on the list and make those reductions, and that would be a reduction in administration. But when we looked at the numbers, it would just be a net zero, because the funding that you get for the case facilitators come from state, and then the rest of it's made up by federal. So we examined administration again too. So.
And you talked about all day, every day kindergarten?
Yep, we talked about all day, every day kindergarten, although that really left the topic pretty quickly.
Just two questions. So what this really would mean also, and it's not listed here, but just for discussion, is that any technology would be status quo. We would not enhance technology. You wouldn't be able to purchase any more technology to any great degree. Would not be able to provide the staff development that's necessary for any new technology that we would have the opportunity to purchase, so that would be the status quo. So what this is, it totals up, if my math is correct, and I was a social studies major, not a math major, but about 30 FTEs would be negatively impacted.
Right, we calculated between 25 and 30, and now we're at the high end, so we're at 30. Yep, that is correct.
Is all technology though in the general fund, isn't there some special fund support for technology?
Yes, we use some operating capital dollars to fund all our data technicians and all the equipment and infrastructure and that type of thing.
And those may or may not be frozen or,
Right. It has its own funding separate from the cuts we're talking about in the fund that we're talking about now. Our technology director, the salary and benefits for that position, and some of the things that have to do with E-rate and some of the programs that we support for education come out of the general fund.
But if we were fortunate enough to purchase new technology, we don't have the staff development money to work with our teachers on how to utilize staff development so it'd be sitting there Well, actually, I think we could have the kids teach us something. Can I ask
Please,
another
please.
question? There isn't on the list, anything with custodial, going to different kind of cleaning models, anything of that nature, or support services.
We talked about that too, and we, there's, like I said, there's gonna be some sort of variance that'll be in there.
Okay.
We're pretty confident it's gonna be around, still 1.7 million by the time spring rolls around if the levy doesn't pass. We're gonna have to investigate those if we're short
Okay.
and take a look at them and see what those areas are. We just, this short a time frame, I just don't wanna make a mistake.
So what you're looking at, this is the minimum.
This is the
It
minimum.
may expand
Yes.
beyond the 29 FTEs.
Yeah, depending on what happens at the state or enrollment or federal government, and there's a lot of variables out there.
Thank you.
Todd, I had a question, someone brought to my attention, middle school athletics, they were they
Thank
were
you.
not sure if that,
Yeah.
yes, I'll just let you address
Yeah,
it.
that was another addition, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. I'm just gonna read these because I haven't, again, had time to put these together. Once I get these together, then in our new format, I'll go ahead and attach them to you, but there's quite a few in here. And these would be eliminated based on the committee's discussion, and Ken is here if you have questions about those. But here we go. Potential cuts for activities or the cuts that the committee has suggested for the board. Middle school girls tennis, middle school girls soccer, middle school boys soccer, middle school boys basketball, middle school wrestling, middle school baseball, middle school volleyball, middle school girls swimming, middle school girls basketball, middle school girls softball, middle school administrative help, middle school supplies, middle school athletic dues. Middle school football, middle school track, pep band, marching band, the Echo, middle school theater, remove the one play salary, the science team, the math team, the prom coordinator, high school boys tennis, high school girls tennis, student council advisor, National Honor Society advisor, and the Link crew advisors would all total that in that 1.7. And we had to find that, I'm sorry, I forgot to list that, but that had to make up the rest of the difference, and that adds up to about, do you remember the dollar amount, Ken, what that was? A little over 100,000. But it saves 2 teachers.
What you're really saying is all our feeder middle school programs would be gone.
Correct.
So that list would replace number 3 here.
Yes, yep, that'll be part of that part, yep.
I'd be interested in hearing any comments you can make regarding all-day, everyday kindergarten, and how that was balanced against secondary class size.
I think it was 2 things. Politically, I don't know if the will is there to follow through on cutting all-day, everyday kindergarten. That's number 1. And number 2, educationally, there's a ton of research that supports all-day, everyday kindergarten, especially with the population that we have in our community. So those are the 2 factors. And we really didn't, like I said, we didn't have a lot of discussion at the committee level for the all-day, everyday kindergarten piece. So those are the 2 reasons why it's on.
Something that's been boiling through my mind, rolling through my mind is, what happens in the morning versus the afternoon in kindergarten?
The difference?
Does most of the education take place in the morning? And, I mean, this is gonna sound kinda crass, but is it fun and games in the afternoon, or is it education in the afternoon?
Yeah, it's education all the way through. There's different breaks that they have, but kids are, I mean, when they start kindergarten, from my own experience, some kids start a little tired and some kids are still pretty active all the way through the process. But by the time they get used to the system, they're all in good shape, and they perform very well all the way through the whole day.
So you feel pretty confident that the quality education that takes place the second half of the day is,
As good as the first part, yes.
I don't even know if it has to be as good, but is it that valuable?
Yeah, and I think you've got some good staff that really do a great job with these kids.
Mr. Bodie, if you allow me to respond to your question also?
I wanna hear this.
Thank you. You know, if you take a look at a half-a-day kindergarten, by the time the kids get there, by the time they get settled down, by the time they do all of the classroom management things, the instructional time is significantly reduced. And then you have to take a look at the other end of that, they get the kids ready for transportation, end of the day. So out of not even a 3 hour day, they probably have 2 hours of instruction. You double that in the afternoon, because now the teacher can focus in on reinforcing what's transpired in the morning with the students academically. Yes, they will have some social interactions, plus they have recess, plus they have other kinds of activities, plus they have specialists come in. Yeah, if you take the specialist out of that in the morning, if you only have a half a day, again, you're reducing the academic time that kids have in half-day kindergarten. So yes, the day greatly enhances the educational opportunities for students in the afternoon.
The other thing, not that this should have anything to do with the all-day, everyday kindergarten versus half-day every day, but it's a pretty high financial impact if you go to half-day kindergarten too, because then you have to double the bus routes for the kindergartners that you go.
So you don't save everything.
I actually spend a little bit more on half-days than you do on all-day, every day.
Well, I have no desire to question the value of all-day, everyday kindergarten. But several times in the earlier document, and I've noticed several times in the current document, we make the point that to eliminate this program or that program, we would be the only school in the Big Nine that doesn't have this. Are we the only school in the Big Nine that has all-day, everyday kindergarten?
I would have to go back and talk to the principals to see which ones have that. I can bring that back and put that in the
Well,
document.
that's a question and there is no doubt that there is benefit. I'm not questioning the research, but I am questioning whether how we balance the obvious benefit of all-day, everyday kindergarten against the damage done to middle school and high school students of going through 6 years of classes that are average density of 35 students. There is research in that area as well. If we have a first-class kindergarten system, which we should have, and the students of this district deserve, can we afford to have a third-class secondary program? And to me, whether you call it second class, third class, how do you measure that? But we are certainly creating negative impacts on this in the middle school and the high school should class sizes rise to this effect, and is that compensated for by the benefit to our kindergarten class? Yes, we're benefiting 300 kindergarten students, but we are cutting programs for 2,000 secondary students. And to me, that's almost an impossible choice to make, but to have this pop up without further board discussion concerns me a little bit.
Well, if the levy passes, then you don't have to worry about it.
Understood. But there are still benefits to be, can we do something that'll benefit 2,000 secondary students and not cause a really significant impact on somebody else? We had some special ed adjustments in our budgeting process this past spring, but I don't see anything on here that indicates that special ed is adding any further reductions to this. I don't see any ELL reductions. And if this levy does not pass, all students are having a diminished program, but that burden should not fall on one group more than another.
Yeah, and I mean, Jerry can probably cite just as much data as I can with all-day, everyday kindergarten. One of the things that it does help is through the process of early childhood programs and all-day, everyday kindergarten is help reduce some of those special education costs. And that's research that we're looking at. As far as the special education costs go, you have to kind of be careful when you're cutting special education because you have a federal law called maintenance of effort. And if you violate that maintenance of effort, then you're out of compliance of the federal government and they can ask you to pay back that money. So that's a very difficult road to go. And again, we don't have enough time to look at some of those cuts. If we have some variance in there, then we'll certainly take a look at it. But there's no way I can come up with that suggestion of special education cost in the next week or so to give you as a potential cut. That's something that we'll have to investigate. And I agree with you. I don't disagree with you. I just don't have enough time to look at it.
Just a comment.
Yeah, please, Mr. Rovers.
And it's unfortunate we're put in this kind of a dilemma, Tom, to have to make these decisions, tough decisions, but there are some educational theorists out there that would say, take the resources you spend on the 12th grade, make that their first college experience, or have some articulation, and take those resources and put it in preschool education. Then our students would be far more successful as far as closing the achievement gap, other kinds of academic achievement.
I'm not questioning that, Chair. What I'm questioning is that if we have a high-quality, let's say K-3 program, preschool, pre-K through third grade,
Yeah,
where
pre-K.
we put in all our efforts to bring kids up to grade level in reading and math and science and social studies and do all that sort of thing. But then we drop them into a secondary program that is not only just starved for resources, but actually overcrowded, overburdened, and underfunded. Then how much of that is going to carry through? We have to, in my opinion, make sure that we are, and I know no one is arguing that we're not doing that. I'm just questioning the fact that we are creating and supporting, seemingly supporting a quality pre-K kindergarten program. No question it's needed, no question it's good, no question the kids should have that. But are we asking our secondary students to pay that price? And whatever theorists you may be, I've heard some of that, I've read some of that research as well. But until we facilitate that to a degree that makes it possible, and particularly having spent 25 years in the middle school, which is a transformative period for all of our students, we need to make sure we are supporting those programs as well. And I am concerned that if we have a high-quality early program but follow it up with a black hole of lack of resources, lack of programming, lack of opportunity, that we are dooming the system. Whatever gains we may have benefited, those kids will move on to a district
And I
that
would
supports
disagree
them.
with that, Tom. Think of what would happen if we didn't have the quality educational program in pre-K and grade 3. If we didn't give those kids the head start they needed, where would they be in that middle school? And so if we take that away from them, we've also taken away that opportunity for significant educational foundation going to the next level.
So
I
it's to be the
think,
next level to go to.
yeah, I think one of the things I would add there is trying to spread these cuts out across different schools. And if you look at it right now, we're talking about 4.2 at the high school, 4.6 at the middle school, and 18 at the elementary school. So we've already, I think, put a huge burden on the elementary school. And so I'm not interested in, personally, just speaking, I agree with everything you've said, Tom, in terms of the importance at all levels. But I think the elementary schools are doing their fair share. And I think all day, everyday kindergarten is important enough to keep. I mean, I think if we were not going to keep that, I wouldn't be putting it into secondary at this point. I'd be putting it into perhaps second grade. But I think we asked our elementary schools to give us their best recommendation, and I want to go with that. So that's my 2 cents on that item. Yes.
This is not on the cut list per se, but you want to entertain my comment?
Yes, please, yeah. Thanks, yeah.
So I think this is very good work. I would still like to see a piece that says how we came, that probably an introductory piece, how we came up with the $1.7 million. I'm not sure that where that came from is totally understood. And then also, we say how fluid the number is, but we treat it as rather that we know that is the right number. And I know we have this brief disclaimer here, but I would like to see a few scenario analysis. What if we do end up with 50 more students this year? Is that gonna, I don't know the answer, but is that gonna affect? I just don't want us to be in the position, we found enough money and we don't have to cut the transportation program after all. For example, I mean, they'll say scare tactics, you know, didn't come through. Or can we take $100,000 from the fund balance, you know, what would, maybe we just can't do that, but I would just like to see sort of a page of those scenarios drawn out, so we don't treat this 1.7 as we know absolutely irrevocably that this is gonna be the number. And it might go higher, I mean, we have to plan for that. We ought to lay out a scenario where that could be the case too, and additional cuts would have to be made, but that's, I just don't wanna go back on anything that we're putting down here as absolute without some indication that we know that can happen in this world of funding.
Could I maybe follow up on that?
Yeah,
So
please
if
do
we
that.
do a scenario like that, maybe we could get a little feedback from the board. I'm just gonna use state funding, cause that's the easiest one to look at. If you want us to run a scenario, can you give me a percent? Last time around, out of the 5224, the state gave us $50 per student. So is there a dollar amount or percent that you want us to estimate with, so that Colleen and I could run a scenario? And I assume the scenario would be, then the board would go back, make a decision on what the priorities are for the district, and then reallocate those resources to replace those programs, or something to that effect. But is there a percentage that the board would like Colleen and I to look at to see if this happens from the state of Minnesota, this is what we're going to do? And we can always do the enrollment, but the percentage is
It's a cleaner one.
the cleaner one.
Easier. Suggestions on numbers to put in there as guidelines from the board? $50 was what we got in the last legislative session. It might be a place to start, to think about that, the scenario in which
What percent is that?
Well, it's under 1%, right? 52, is 5224 now, or is it 5274?
and it's slightly under
52.24,
1%. So maybe we could start with a number of 1%? Does that seem, I'm just throwing this out there, certainly is open for discussion. I think James's idea holds merit. A scenario in which the state increased the funding by 1%, what that might mean to change for this, so that we can be as clear about what that might mean for us as possible.
We probably should set a higher expectation for them.
We should set a more realistic expectation based on past performance.
Well, I think the point is to be hypothetical and to illustrate that this could happen.
Yep.
So that when people, if the levy doesn't pass and we have to reallocate resources.
Let's just say we get another $100 a student from the state.
Mhm.
It's 2% or so?
Then you can work backwards at least.
Let's do that. I mean, I'm gonna say
Is it,
that.
when does the state set a new level? Do they do that in the next session?
They'll do that in the next session for
Funding
next year.
session, yes.
Mhm. That's right.
Whenever they finish.
Right. So next August, we might know what we have.
I would say the state will probably pay back what they owe us to begin with before they add anything.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know I don't have a set group of scenarios, I think, and I don't think we need a lot of them, but I would just like to show that there is.
That scenario is certainly possible, it's
Right.
beyond our control, but we would have to respond to it as a board, and what that might be is something we should discuss. Does that seem like a reasonable suggestion to the board, to ask Todd to try and put together, can you do something for that?
Well,
by
it's,
next
you know,
week?
it's $100, 4,000 kids, so it's $400,000 that if the state comes through,
Right.
we would have to prioritize and decide where to reallocate those resources.
Do we want to try and do that prioritizing by next week? Is that what we're asking Todd to do?
I won't have time to do it.
Okay.
I'll just have to come up with a hypothetical, real general statement before,
Okay.
I just won't be able to.
All right. I think that's a fair way to approach it, being as transparent as we can about some things that are beyond our control. Okay,
So let me ask the opposite.
I know, I knew that was coming.
What if, you know, and we know that, what if the legislature reduces our funding?
And that's kind of what I was talking about before, is if we get into a situation where we need to reduce our funding, we really have to examine where we are going to go. And I think that's gonna be a longer process. Again, prioritizing where the next set of cuts are gonna come from is gonna take a lot longer than a week or two. But I'll put that scenario in there too, Trey.
Okay.
I think that's realistic.
all right, so I wanna end this discussion in the way that we did last time. I think it's really important for us to be as clear as we can at the next meeting, and to take action on this item, so that the board has made a decision about what we, believe, the impact is, and, committing ourselves, those of us who are here, and perhaps if we are still here, that this is our intent to carry forward. So, does everyone feel like we've, given our piece to Todd and others about what we're expecting for next week so that we can make that decision? We certainly don't want to arrive next week and feel like we haven't gotten what we needed. Okay, and of course, I am sure Todd would encourage you to contact him should you have anything that pops up. I would encourage you to come up with those things earlier rather than later, so we have as much time as possible, so that we can take action on this item next week.
Yeah,
Mr.
just
Rocha.
a request, if any of us as the board members come up with some different ideas and we forward it to Todd, can the rest of us also be made aware of that? So we don't have new information next week that we weren't at least aware of, so
Absolutely, absolutely.
thank you.
And I think we've said this in the past, and it's worth reiterating, those comments should stay in the form of a question for information or sharing an idea. We should not carry out a discussion.
That's correct.
Via email. Those need to happen in a public forum, so next week we'll have discussions on these items, but, so that we know what items might be up for discussion, we should certainly share those things with each other.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Other questions or comments on this item? All right. Hearing none, I need to make sure I know where I am in our agenda.
Number 11.
Number 11, other items of information. We do not yet have a student representative.
I forgot to contact, I was supposed to contact her. I'll get it.
Okay, we do have someone?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Any items of information from school board members?
By the way, a student representative, they wouldn't have to stay all night for our meetings if we just got them in to give a report in the beginning of the meeting or something.
I don't know, I kinda like it when they're involved in the whole process, so
We have a spot for him.
I think it's okay. You know, one of the things that come up, quite honestly, is their MSBA does offer a scholarship for kids. And for kids who participate, they do open that up, so I think it's okay to have them there. If they wanna go for that scholarship, then that would be a good background for us.
It'll probably cost them a 4.0 because it's, they get a B in the class.
Do we allow homework at our meetings? To decide on that. All right, any other items of information from school board members? All right, hearing none, Mr. Superintendent.
Yeah, just report that we had a great start to the school year. I got around to all the schools, different schools, and was able to visit with staff and kids and parents, so it was a very good start for us. We have a C legislative, actually I've been to the C legislative committee, there's a regular session coming up, and we are now designing the platform for C. C stands for Schools for Equity and Education. And they talk about tax impact and equalization and the Minnesota Miracle and things like that that we want to take a look at and lobby at the state with regard to funding. Congratulations to Ruth Olson on her Section 1AA award in Casson on September 12th, 2012.
We should have moved this ahead because I saw Ruth was here earlier and we could have
Oh, we missed it.
recognized
I
her.
didn't see her.
And maybe you might just want to explain what the AA award is.
A better person to do that would be Ken, who did nominate her
There's
for that
absolutely
award. It was
nobody
very
more
nice.
deserving than Ruth Olson.
Absolutely. Ruth received the Region 1AA Distinguished Service Award. Region 1AA is actually, as far as I know, according to Dave Stead from the State High School League, the only region in the state that tries to recognize people in the schools who provide great service to those schools. And Ruth has been, she's been a coach, she's been she works the table for us. I think she's worked wrestling for many, many years as far as the table. She subs for teachers, she subs for secretaries, she subs for paras. She pretty much does everything in our school district, and so it was a pretty easy thing for me to write a nomination for her. So we're very happy that she received that award.
Yeah, on behalf of the board, we certainly recognize her, and we thank Ken for putting her forward for that.
And then I just put teacher and principal evaluation update on the list just to keep an eye on it. We are scheduled to meet here pretty soon. We haven't actually set a schedule, I don't think yet, Tim, with regard to our schedule. We are going to go to a workshop that Troy and Jerry and I and Colleen, did you get my email about possibly having Colleen go to for the teacher evaluation? So we're learning more as we go with this teacher evaluation process. We just don't have a lot of information from the state and guidance yet, so we're getting there. That's all I have. I don't have a lot.
All right, thank you, Todd. Last on the agenda, dates to remember. On September 24th at 6:30, we will have a special school board meeting. That's 1 week from today, right back here at City Hall. October 9th at 7:30 will be in the morning. Will be a finance meeting at the district office. October 10th at 5 p.m. will be a policy meeting at the district office. October 15th will be at 5:30 p.m. will be a work session at the district office. October 22nd will be a AAUW school board candidate forum. I believe that takes place here at City Hall. Is that correct? Anybody?
Is it here? I thought it was at the chamber office. It's here.
I was gonna say, it's usually here, isn't it?
We have somebody on it who assures me it's here. That's my memory of
I'd be
it.
sitting
What
at the
time?
chamber office.
What time?
7.
What time is it up?
Oh, thank you. 7 to 9 is the time of that
Thank you.
candidate forum. October 25th at 7 p.m. Will be an open forum at the Faribault High School. October 29th, 6:30 p.m. here in City Hall will be the regular board meeting.
And just scheduled today, October 29th at 4:45 will be the curriculum committee meeting.
Excellent, thank you. All right.
At the district office.
At the district office, thank you. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Where's the AAUW? Where's that
Put
logo?
it in here.
It's
here.
It's in
It's
here.
here.
Yep.
It's here.